incorporated into the cost of business. Responsibility and cost are to be shared among manufacturers, users, and the products and the public and private service providers. What is extended producer responsibility? EPR is a mandated type of producer responsibility that includes at the minimum the requirement that the manufacturer's responsibility for a product extends to a post-consumer management of that product and its packaging. And that includes shifting the financial responsibility upstream to the manufacturer and away from the public sector with government oversight, and providing incentives to manufacturers to incorporate environmental considerations in the design of their products and packaging. So this moves from voluntary to a mandatory system, often included in legislation. Legislative strategies is what we focused on in our committee work, and we looked at different options. We looked at different ways to engage, to require producers to redesign their products and packaging, and to be responsible for their proper labeling, education, collection, processing, and enforcement. And that includes different possibilities, different procedures, different approaches, bans, fees, deposits, targets, mandates, penalties, content requirements, and EPR with or without pros. Most laws that are called EPR include many of these different types of legislative strategies. They may be all or some or none of these. If you look at the map on this, this is enacted in 2021 or introduced packaging EPR laws in 2022. If you look at the map on the right, the smaller map, those are EPR laws in general of all products and packaging across the country. So you can see a lot of colors and a lot of activity across the country and a lot of states. But if you look at the map, the larger map on the left, those are packaging particular, EPR packaging states that have engaged in conversation. The green indicates laws that are passed. The orange or peach color are bills that were introduced in 2022. 2021, 2022. So we've got a lot of activity across the country, a lot of discussion in state legislatures that are talking about EPR, but these bills are varying significantly. And so what our approach from the NRC's perspective is to try to find what the key issues and then also the key strategies are for EPR. We were not trying to identify what is the best legislative bill to promote or endorse, but we wanted to identify what are the key issues for structuring EPR for packaging and products legislation. So getting into the key issues, best practices, maximum benefits from programs without a producer responsibility organization, with governments taxing manufacturers for cost of properly managing products and packaging. And with our input sessions with our members, there was a lot of discussions about with or without pros, producer responsibility organizations, and what those pros have, the negatives and the pros and the cons involved. Reimbursing service providers for cost of those systems with a lockbox, such as an enterprise fund, to ensure fees paid will be used only for these purposes. We've heard a lot of horror stories where income from these fees are used for other purposes unintended. Governed by a board that includes a majority of reuse, recycling, and composting service providers and the general public. Managed transparency by public agencies. Transparency became a very major issue in our discussions. It may include pros to finance, but not operate the systems. That's an interesting point that under our discussions. New systems must support, not impede, and build upon existing waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting systems and independent enterprises. We heard a lot of discussion about not overlapping and destroying and running out of business the existing structures that are out there. No pro should be a monopoly or monopoly. It should not overrun and become a single entity. We had a lot of concerns about monopolies running the business in an entire state. Pro subject to strong governmental oversight and transparency. Designed to provide economic incentives for producers to design their products better while implementing the principle that the polluter pays and penalizing non-circular products. 3 key points there: that the polluter pays, that there's penalizing for non-circular products, and redesign included in the process there. Producer responsibility programs should include requirements that both products and packaging be designed with the lowest life cycle impacts. So as we're talking packaging, we're also talking about the product itself as well. Recognize that for every pound of consumer throws away, there's 70 pounds of material discarded upstream. So there's a need to look at the life cycle of the material discards upstream in the mining and extraction processes. EPR bills that focus mainly on the end of products' useful life and distribution of funds to recycling programs miss most of the original purpose of EPR and fail to minimize environmental impacts. So we need to look at the original purpose of EPR there. Now, moving to the key strategies for EPR, moving to the 8 priorities that NRC has developed, the key strategies, the 8 key strategies. 1, prioritize, reduce, redesign, repair, and reuse. We're getting back to the 3 R's prior to recycling. Set high standards for prevention, reuse, recycling, and composting. We've seen a lot of low bar standards, and we're asking for higher standards. Hold producers accountable for end of life of products they produce. Partner with and build from existing programs and ensure community input. Guide EPR programs with independent public oversight. Ban all thermal processing of covered products and packaging. That's an easy outlet to burn the products. And we believe that there should be a life cycle of circular economy of these products. Minimize or eliminate toxic substances in the design of products and packaging. And finally, and most importantly, incorporate justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we love that term diversion, but what we mean is diversity. Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So used well, EPR is one of the cornerstones of the transition towards a circular economy. And that is the end that we are trying to reach. Our legislative committee that we thank is Pete Adrian, Rick Anthony, myself, Maggie Clark, Wayne Georgie, Marta Keene, Gary Liss, and Mary Alice Pedersen. And we'll take questions at the end as at the session. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to take the questions following the presentation. So if you do have anything you'd like to ask of Bob at this time, get it into the chat. And we'll follow up as we move on. Our next presenter is Judith Ennick. So Judith, you've got your slides up there. I think we're getting very close. There we go. Just real quickly, she's president of Beyond Plastics. She teaches at Bennington College, and she served at one time as the EPA regional administrator under the Obama administration. Judith, you can add anything else you'd like about yourself, but thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Pete. It's a real honor to be with all of you, and particularly speaking after Bob. I thought that was a really terrific presentation, and I'm going to echo some of the priorities that he already reviewed. Check us out at beyondplastics.org. That is my organization. And before setting that up at Bennington College in Vermont, I served as EPA regional administrator, one of my great honors working for President Obama. That's me at a federal Superfund site in New Jersey. I love visiting Superfund sites. Feel free to live tweet this talk. My Twitter handle and Beyond Plastics Twitter handle is there. And just a little bit of context and why this is such an important topic. We are turning our ocean into a landfill with over 15 million metric tons of plastics going into the ocean every year. Plastics is the new coal. We issued a report last year documenting greenhouse gas emissions from the production, use, and disposal of plastics. It is on track now to exceed greenhouse gas emissions from coal-fired power plants within the decade. And plastics is very much an environmental justice issue. This is the amazing Sharon Levine, Goldman Prize winner. She lives in St. James Parish, Louisiana, which is part of an area called Cancer Alley, where there is a concentration of plastic production facilities that are damaging people's health. Extended producer responsibility is one way to deal with the plastics issue and other packaging, of course. And I know it's traditionally known as EPR. I like to call it packaging reduction policies. And what I'd like to do is walk through some of the key elements of strong packaging reduction legislation. My organization, Beyond Plastics, along with a number of other organizations, have spent the last 2 years drafting a model bill, which I'd be happy to share with anyone who is interested. It's appropriate for the state level. And it's really important that we do not adopt weak packaging reduction laws, because that's going to be the law of the land for a couple of years, and policymakers will not circle back to make improvements. And I know that there are 4 states that have already adopted extended producer responsibility for packaging. I've got concerns with all the 4 statutes on the books, and I think they can be significantly stronger. So here are some of the key elements that I'm going to walk you through today. I've got a whole bunch more, but these are the major areas that I would invite you to think about when you're considering whether to support or oppose or stay out of some of these policy debates. And these bills are coming to every single state legislature in the country. If you are not planning on working on EPR, this is where the action is for 2023. So our first principle is, what I like about extended producer responsibility is the fee on packaging that then goes to support waste reduction, reuse, and recycling programs. That doesn't solve the plastic pollution problem, because plastic recycling has only achieved a 5 to 6% recycling rate. And we all can say in elementary school, reduce, reuse, recycle. We never get to reduce and reuse. So our model bill calls for a 50% reduction in packaging, which you can achieve by eliminating some packaging or shifting to refillable or reusable packaging. 50% over 10 years, which is counted incrementally. The requirements kick in every 2 years. One thing I learned from my tenure in government is you don't do a long-term aspirational goal. You do a goal that is commensurate to the problem you're trying to fix, and then you approach it in steps. Think of this as achieving the solid waste hierarchy, which is on the books in all of our states. And our best practice is to actually require, not just recommend, reductions. So these have to be mandatory reductions, and it will result in packaging either being eliminated or redesigned. After you do the 50% reduction over 10 years, then what's ever left needs to be recyclable or contain recycled content. And we have strong definitions for what that means. We have fuel efficiency standards for cars. We have energy efficiency standards for appliances. We need environmental standards for packaging that are clear and that are binding. That will drive design changes, particularly accompanied with eco-modulated fees. I don't think fees alone drive design changes. Fees provide important revenue for local recycling programs, but does not stop the barrage of packaging that is overwhelming local governments. Second, we need to remove toxic chemicals from packaging. The public is surprised when they hear that there are PFAS, forever chemicals in packaging, that there are heavy metals in packaging, chemicals like formaldehyde. So our bill has a really nice section on toxics reduction. Third, absolutely no burning. The plastics industry is finally admitting that plastic recycling has been a failure. So their bright idea now is to shift toward burning plastic. The names keep changing. First it was chemical recycling, now it's advanced recycling. It's neither advanced or recycling. It is heating plastic at very high temperature, and the handful of facilities, under 10, that are functioning in the United States are mostly turning plastics into fossil fuel, the last thing our warming climate needs. So in your bill, when you define recycling, you have to very clearly make sure that the definition does not include incineration, waste to energy, gasification, pyrolysis, solvolysis, etc. And this is a key thing because the American Chemistry Council and others that do not want to reduce the generation of plastic is trying to fool legislators into thinking, just keep generating all of this plastics and we can burn it in the end and you don't have to worry about it. Echoing what Bob has said, if you do set up a producer responsibility organization, it must have strong oversight and accountability. We also recommend the establishment of an inspector general to oversee the program because billions of dollars will be moving through the system. We would not expect the tobacco industry to be in charge of anti-smoking, or the fossil fuel industry to figure out how to tackle climate change. Why would we put packaging companies in charge of reducing packaging? And it is a very unfair situation for local governments who are trying to design comprehensive waste reduction and recycling programs to just have this endless stream of non-recyclable packaging coming at them. The eco-modulated fees will provide for some taxpayer relief. We want to see the investments not just in recycling, but also in waste reduction, refill, and reuse programs at the local level. And we've got lots of examples of what could be funded. We are huge supporters of deposit laws for beverage containers or bottle bills. It was the first bill I ever worked on as a college student. EPR, bottle bill is a great example of EPR. We think the bill should be separate because they're pretty much separate programs. And Martha Ainsworth will talk in greater detail on that, but go bottle bill. It prevents litter and it keeps recyclables source separated and clean, and is a great complement to strong EPR. So, and we also have to modernize the bottle bill in states that adopted it 40 years ago. For instance, my home state of New York does not include deposits on liquor or wine. We need to increase the deposit to a dime. Voluntary efforts are not enough. That's why you're seeing this high interest from state legislators. Gaze on this little chart for a moment. What we did was compare what the brands said they were going to do in terms of using more recycled material, and then what they've actually done. So the red bar is the promise, the blue bar is the reality. Imagine bringing this report card home to your parents. I promised to get a C, but I didn't even come close. So what does reduced packaging look like? When we talk about 50% reduction in packaging, some people say, oh my gosh, that's too ambitious. And others say it's not enough. I think 50% reduction in packaging goals, again, which includes refill and reuse, will prompt design change, like soap with no packaging at all. Smarties candy out of Europe. If you're like me and you've had a tough week, Friday night is a bag of M&Ms, Diet Pepsi, and People magazine on the couch. There's nothing I can do with that pouch of M&M candy when I'm done. Smarties is made from recycled paper, and when you're done, you put it in your recycling bin along with newspaper. Why can't we have that in the US? People often use the example of you need plastic for shampoo bottles because it drops in the tub. Well, you can have aluminum for shampoo and soap bottles. This is a cool little product. It's a soap container. After you finish the soap inside, the container is actually soap and you keep using it. Dove, you've heard of that major line. Refillable deodorant. So the plastic cylinder you use over and over again, and you just buy the deodorant to replace in the cylinder. We're seeing more and more pre-fill stations. Unilever has launched a system in England. They have a pilot in Portland, Oregon right now. We need this in every single supermarket, switching to refillables and making it easy for consumers. Blue Land is a company that sells home care products. They ship you the package once and you just get the refills. Another pre-fill system. Kit Kat candy in Japan, all paper that is truly recyclable. Same thing with soap and paperboard if you don't want no packaging. This is lip balm made with all cardboard packaging. So when you're done, rather than having a little plastic tube, you just put the cardboard in your recycling bin. We're all concerned about the plastic clamshells for berries. There's no reason why it cannot come in cardboard. So those are just a couple examples that another world in packaging is possible if we have strong laws without loopholes. And I've been involved in drafting and helping to pass strong state level laws on a range of issues. And I just want to strongly urge you to avoid glaring loopholes. Here's an example. The California EPR bill, SB 54, includes the following sentence. You are exempt from the law if your single-use material presents unique challenges in complying. You do not want that language in any bill. And that's what happens when bills are negotiated behind closed doors in the middle of the night and does not involve the public. So our other key recommendation is to have a very open, transparent process where everyone is heard, and then policymakers make the call, preferably not in the middle of the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. We're going to move on. The next speaker is Martha Ainsworth. Martha, if you can unmute and get your slides up and running, we will get started momentarily. Just to let you know, Martha is a member of the National Sierra Club Zero Waste Team. She has authored the club's 2021 guidance on beverage containers. She had a long career in research as a research economist and evaluator of public policy. And I will pass it over to Martha. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm trying to make this in presentation mode. I hope that worked. Thanks for the introduction, Pete, and it's an honor to be here for me as well. And following Rob and Judith is really an amazing experience here. I just wanted to say that Rob's presentation made the important point that deposit programs are part of several key legislative strategies as part of an overall effort to increase producer responsibility. And then Judith noted that deposit laws on beverage containers are, and I quote, the best example of EPR today, and with decades of success in 10 US states. And she also said that packaging and bottle bills are complementary and they are better together. And I agree with all of those points. So today I'm going to take those arguments further, a little further, to explain a couple of key points here. First, why beverage container deposit bills, also known as bottle bills or deposit return or
Martha,
recycling.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we're not seeing your slides on screen. If you could take those down and maybe reload them. And I'll go ahead and pull up the backup just in case we need those.
Okay. Do you see that? You see-
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
let me see if we can do slideshow. Can you see that?
Yeah, you might hit slideshow and then from the beginning up on the on top.
Okay.
See slideshow is 5 little things in, 5 tabs in.
Yeah, on my screen, I'm already full screened here. I'd have to exit again.
Yeah, no, this is good. Leave this.
Okay, all right, good. So I'm on page 2. Sorry about that, folks. So I'm going to talk about in very shortly why beverage container deposit bills, also known as bottle bills, deposit return or recycling refund programs, are so effective, why EPR for packaging programs with no deposit are not a substitute for a bottle bill, and why in fact may make it more difficult to get a bottle bill passed. And which is why they should be better together, like Judith said. The points I'm going to talk about draw on the Sierra Club's recently released beverage container guidance and prepared by the National Zero Waste Team. Sierra Club policy has advocated for beverage containers to be refillable and returnable for a minimum deposit since the 1970s, and it supports stated national bottle bills as a vital strategy to increase the collection and reclamation of clean materials for recycling into new materials.
So Martha, I'm so sorry. Your slides are not advancing. How about if I pull up your slides and screen share, and then you just tell me when you want to advance those. Does that work?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, no, we're sorry. It's okay, so hopefully you can see that. I will try to get it in presentation mode, but I was just trying to get it up quickly. So which slide are you at?
That third one right there.
There you go. Can you see that?
I can see it. I'm just waiting to see if you can get it into the full.
Yeah, go ahead and go. Just
Okay, all right, good.
yeah.
So, yeah, this is not very big now. So first, the issue of bottle bills are highly effective. They're very effective at increasing recovery and recycling. The deposit is a powerful incentive to return containers for recycling, not just from households at home, but for people away from home and from businesses. As you can see in this slide, the recycling rate for aluminum cans in states with deposits, that's the left set of bars, is nearly double the rate in non-deposit states. And in fact, the contrast is even greater for PET, plastic, and glass. These differences right here. Oh, actually, I can't point to it right because I don't have, okay, never mind. And the recycling rates, these recycling rates in deposit containers would be even higher if the states with those programs, next slide, please. Here we have the recycling rate for the 10 states in the US, arranged in order from the lowest to the highest deposit. And you can see that a higher deposit would probably greatly increase what we see on the left side of the screen if they go up to 10 cents. And then even more materials would be reclaimed if they expanded what is included in their bottle bill, the different kinds of beverages. You're going to hear more about modernized bottle bills in tomorrow's session on the topic. So let's go to the next slide, please. So bottle bills also produce high quality materials for post-consumer feedstock. This is a kind of a different version of what Judith showed before. They're arranged in terms of their the corporate plastic recycled content commitments, and then from lowest to highest, and then what they've actually done. The materials collected through the deposit program are much cleaner and less contaminated than materials collected through curbside programs, creates the opportunity for closed loop bottle to bottle recycling. But because of the need for high quality feedstock, 10 states with beverage container deposit laws provide a disproportionate share of the feedstock for manufacturers meeting recycled content goals that they've adopted. Have the next slide, please. These bills are also highly effective in reducing beverage container litter, particularly important from the perspective of reducing plastic pollution. So this slide shows that following Hawaii's implementation of their bottle bill in 2005, there was a 60% reduction in the share of beverage containers as a percent of total litter. And in addition, another analysis using coastal cleanup data for Australia and the US found that the share of beverage containers is about 40% lower in areas with container deposit law than in those without. And that deposit laws are most effective in reducing coastal beverage container litter in low-income communities. The next slide, please. So in the 40 states that don't yet have a beverage container deposit system, some may think that including beverage containers as a covered product without a deposit in an EPR for packaging program is an alternative to having a bottle bill. I did some research over the weekend, and in 2022, 12 EPR for packaging bills were introduced in states that did not already have a bottle bill. Now, in half of them, the bottle bill was also introduced together, as Judith suggested, and beverage containers were not a covered product in the EPR for packaging bill. But in the other half, the other 6, beverage containers were covered product in the EPR bill, and there was no deposit in the program at all. So without a deposit as an incentive, what can we expect in those 6 states? EPR for packaging will never achieve the high return and recycle rates of a bottle bill for beverage containers. The high quality feedstock needed for PCR content that you might want to include in the EPR bill for food containers will be in very short supply, and beverage container litter will continue polluting the environment, escaping the recycling stream and wasting resources. Let me just say that I'm from Maryland, and my state was one of those states that had an EPR bill with no beverage container deposit. Maryland an estimated 5.2 billion beverage containers were sold in Maryland in 2019, but only 24% or 1.2 billion were recycled. So here we are next to the Chesapeake Bay. 4 billion containers that year were wasted. They were landfilled, incinerated, or litter carried into the Chesapeake Bay and out in the ocean. So a modernized bottle bill would have captured 3.2 billion more beverage containers for a recycling rate of about 84%. So that's what could happen without a deposit. There's not really much that an EPR for packaging program to do to change the picture. Redesign can make some things more recyclable, but it can't do much to increase the collection rate like a financial incentive will in a deposit. I have the next slide, please. Almost done. So in states without a deposit, the EPR for packaging may actually make it more difficult to pass a bottle bill in the future. And this is, I think, something worth consideration when you're designing your program. Although the deposit programs would reduce costs to local governments in many ways by diverting the containers from landfills, incinerators, the safety disposal costs, diverting containers from the recycling stream, reducing the processing costs and collection, and capturing containers that would have been littered and reducing the cleanup costs. All these things are reductions in cost for local government. But because the EPR for packaging legislation often reimburses local governments for processing recyclables, it creates a financial incentive for them to oppose deposit programs that would reduce those subsidies. So this is the point we make in our guidance document for all to consider. And the bottom line is, if we could get the last slide. Okay, so again, better together, as Judith said, bottle bills and EPR for packaging are complementary. With a separate bottle bill, EPR for packaging legislation can focus on some of these other things. And they do have really different structures. So could I go to the last, please? Thank you. Thank you. That's my last slide, the thank you slide. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to present and look forward to any questions.
There we go. Well, thank you very much, Martha. Appreciate the presentation. So we've got a few minutes left here to go over some questions. There are some things in the chat, which is great. I'm just scrolling back to some of the earlier ones, but I guess we'll kind of do this in more of a panel. A lot of acknowledgement that these are good points. So Ella Cooley did ask, does anybody understand the greenhouse footprint of an aluminum bottle versus plastic? It's not plastic, but it's actually better from a life cycle analysis perspective. I think, Judith, you touched on that a little bit in your presentation with some of the examples. Maybe you could share that.
Sure. So if you make an aluminum container from recycled material as opposed to virgin, you save 95% of the energy that you would use. I know that there's this myth that because plastics is lighter, it's better from a greenhouse gas perspective. But the key thing is using recycled material to make the product and package, and also making sure that it is recyclable. And there is I would also, it doesn't deal with this directly, but I would urge participants to go to beyondplastics.org and look at our report, Plastics is the New Coal. I don't think plastics is a solution to solving the climate crisis at all.
I'll add another note. Life cycle analysis of plastics containers generally assume long distance hauling. Hundreds of miles, even thousands of miles in the life cycle analysis. If we're truly working towards circular economies, shorter distances are not calculated in the life cycle analysis of plastics. And other types of structural materials for our containers will win out over plastics when we convince the life cycle analysis people to actually calculate shorter distances and shorter hauls. So we need to look at a change in the way we look at life cycle analysis for shorter hauls and life cycle systems that have shorter hauls.
Martha, anything on your side on that?
Oh, I agree with both of them. And I carry an aluminum water bottle.
So I'm going to revert to one of the first questions. Catherine noted that she was curious about your take on the role of compostable packaging, considering most organic waste goes in the landfills and is a source of methane. Obviously, several of these bills that are being proposed or currently have the EPR PPP acronym after them, with the exception maybe California. I'm not sure if paper got in there. So if you want to comment on any of that, if be my guest.
We include all packaging, including paper and cardboard, in our model packaging bill. We do not include compostable packaging as something we want to aspire to for a few reasons. One is I'm very old school when it comes to composting. Let's just stick with yard waste and food waste. And then in the end, you actually get a soil amendment that improves soil health. When you try to compost packaging, it's composting as a disposal option, not as a soil health option. I'm very skeptical about whether some of this packaging actually degrades. And we really would like to see packaging shift to reusable, durable packaging. Let's have all of our public cafeterias switch back to real dishes, durable dishes with utensils, and install dishwashing equipment and create jobs that way. I think compostable packaging is also problematic is if it breaks down into smaller pieces of plastic, then you've got a microplastic problem. So I'm very sympathetic to restaurants that want to move away from plastics. They're spending a whole lot more money on so-called compostable plastic packaging, showing that they want to make a change. But particularly if the compostables do not go to a high temperature commercial composting operation, most of that stuff is just going to a landfill. So I think we want to have packaging reduction bills that do not include compostability as an option.
Okay. Anybody else on that, the compostable packaging discussion?
I have a question for Judith. Is that, are you thinking only of compostable plastic or also compostable paper products?
Well, most paper products, depending on the liners and the additives, are compostable. But in our model bill, we do not have compostable packaging as a standard that we aspire to.
Thanks.
And also, you don't want that stuff getting into your recycling bin. I think recyclers really don't want single-use plastic bags because it gets into the gears of the equipment, and you don't want to contaminate your source-separated recyclables with so-called compostables.
Okay. Karen Kaplan asked something about waste reduction initiatives. What kinds are there out there that you're seeing? In case in point, like charging for disposables and to-go beverage containers. I think we saw something about Starbucks maybe moving in that direction to try to deter that use of the one-time use products.
I'm happy to answer, but I think I'm talking too much. Would someone else like to go?
I love the examples in Judith's PowerPoint, and there's plenty of corporate movement in that direction. I'm hesitant to quote some corporations because of a lot of greenwashing that's out there, but I do think there's some sincere movement in some of the corporations to try to move towards waste reduction and reuse. They're experimenting. There's a lot of experimentation going on. I've been doing a lot of carryouts in food where there is some reusable containers, but sometimes there's failure in their efforts. The reusable containers tend to be non-practical at the home level, and so I tend to call it experimental in the corporate, particularly in the restaurant world, and they need some advice from our professionals. I think they're open to some advice, but there's a delicate balance between greenwashing and experiments in waste reduction and reuse that's out there in the corporate world, and we've got to watch for that greenwashing.
I will say I'm encouraged that Coca-Cola says that they're committed to 25% refillables by 2030. That, of course, requires deposits. So I'm waiting for Coca-Cola to support bottle bills. Come on now, if you're serious about 25% refillable. The problem is these hit or miss voluntary announcements are not enough. Yeah. People are living next to landfills, incinerators, transfer stations, and it's really directly affecting their health. But if we had a law on the books, like a packaging reduction law that says you have to reduce or eliminate packaging by 50%, you will see a massive market shift because they will then have skin in the game to solve the problem, as opposed to just shifting more and more overpackaged, non-recyclable packaging onto local governments and taxpayers.
Well, I want to thank everyone for your time. We are at time, and I do want to share just briefly, there is a sponsor spotlight and break that's occurring now. And then we're going to come back at 2 o'clock Eastern with the 4 rooms. As you'll see, room D is EPR for packaging legislation. So I think it's another good step. We'll hear some more about some of the current state legislative activity, and then wrapping up towards the end of the day here as well. So once again, thank you to all of our speakers. Great conversation, great information shared. For anyone that wishes to speak to them later, I hope they'll join us in the party track sessions section, and we'll have some continuing conversations from there. Till then, I think thank you, and we'll see you after the break.
You're on.
Okay, did you move us out?
No,
I did.
Pink here is on.
Hello, my name is Kevin Lynch with Paint Care. Paint Care is a nonprofit product stewardship organization created by the paint industry. It makes it easier to responsibly dispose of leftover paint. In states with paint stewardship laws, Paint Care operates paint recycling programs on behalf of paint manufacturers. There are operating Paint Care programs in 11 states and the District of Columbia. Across the 11 Paint Care programs, there are more than 2,000 drop-off sites, most of which are paint retailers. When you purchase paint in a Paint Care state, there's a small Paint Care fee paid by the manufacturers, passed on to the consumer, that funds the program, helping to educate the public to buy right, use it up, and recycle the rest. Paint Care also works with local municipalities to cover their paint disposal costs through household hazardous waste events and facilities, and various other solid waste sites that wish to participate. Paint Care hosts their own paint drop-off events and has piloted a few paint reuse events in certain geographies. Finally, Paint Care offers a large volume pickup service that will provide no-cost pickups of 100 gallons or more to businesses and residents if you meet certain criteria and are located within a Paint Care state. To date, Paint Care has collected 61 million gallons of paint, provided 7,000 large volume pickups, and hosted over 300 paint drop-off events. Please go to paintcare.org to learn more. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Rebecca from Bush Systems, and we're proud to be a sponsor of the National Recycling Congress. Our mission is to support everyone who cares about waste diversion with leading edge products and services that maximize the quantity and quality of their diversion program. As experts in the industry, we understand the role that bin design has in successful recycling programs and put focus on best practices like color coding and clear signage throughout our innovative research and design process. We take great pride in the insights that we receive from Alec Cooley, our senior advisor, who also serves on the NRC board, and we encourage you to check out his presentation session on best practices for addressing contamination. Check out our website, bushsystems.com, for other educational resources, including free webinars, blogs, and our full catalog of products. Our sales team is ready to answer any diversion-related questions that you might have. Hi, I'm of the National Recycling Congress. Our mission is to support everyone who cares about waste diversion